Now we're going to talk about the part of the global business plan that has to do with finance. And I'll tell you straight up, I'm not a finance guy. This is not my strongest area. Whenever I have to do finance stuff, I rely on the real experts who do a good job at that. At the same time, I've done some accounting, I've done some finance, I've done budgets, I'm pretty familiar with the process. And for the purpose of building a business plan, probably the fact that I am not the super expert on finance may be helpful to you, because if you want to really get in the weeds, there's better places to go. But if you want to just get an idea of how not to be so intimidated by by a finance plan as part of a global business plan, and you want to figure out how do I even find this stuff so that I can present it in such a way that it might be pleasing to a financier or to a manager, or I don't know, if you're in an MBA program, to my professor, right? This is the kind of video that's going to help you. So let's do it. If you're getting a lot out of these videos, please like, subscribe, share with other people, leave some comments, let me know how I'm doing, or if there's things you want to know about, or other videos that you want me to do. Or hey, if you like this style of instruction, come visit me at the University of St. Mary. I'd love to work with you. You could be my student. We could work together. The stuff that you see in the videos is the same kind of things that we learn about, and really the same kind of approach that we take to learning. All right, let's talk about finance plan. I'm not giving you information as much as I'm just going to tell you how you approach this. This is not a finance class, so I'm not going to teach you finance. But I know that this is the part of the plan that most people get the most nervous about, and it's probably the part of the plan that you might be the least nervous about, hopefully by the time I'm done talking to you. Let's talk a little bit about your financial strategy. That is the piece of the global business plan that will involve the spreadsheet, the numbers, the stuff that's going to hopefully justify the cost and the profit you could potentially make off of your venture. So there's two elements that I want to focus on. The first one is the spreadsheet itself. What I would recommend is that you have 3 tabs, one for each of the categories below. Startup costs, cost revenue analysis, and then a break-even analysis, right? With your break-even, you need to break it down, I would say probably by months or years. How long is it going to take you to recoup the cost that you sunk into it and then start turning a profit? The other major section is going to be the written narrative. That happens within the body of the main report itself, of the paper, and what you're doing there is explaining how you got the numbers that you plugged into that spreadsheet, right? Where did you get the data? If you didn't have data, what are your best guesses? How did you come up with this stuff? And so what's going to come next is I'm going to do a little bit of explaining on both of these, right? Make some suggestions on the spreadsheet and also talk a little bit maybe about how you make those assumptions and what you can do with that. You've already had your accounting and finance classes, so you should know the nuts and bolts as far as how to do it. I will say there are some nice templates that you can look for online on how to do a break-even analysis, or all that stuff that it says in those rules. Just find yourself a nice spreadsheet and plug it in. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
It can be in US dollars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In fact, I think it would be easier if it were, because let's say that you're trying to appeal to a boss or an American financier, a bank, somebody's going to give you money, right? It's going to be easier for them to figure out what it is in American dollars than it is in whatever the local currency is going to be. Now let me say a little bit about the potential research you can do, right? There are a number of ways you can find research. Obviously, the internet is your friend, and I've helped many people with business plans before. Sometimes it involves just Googling things like, what are the property values in this certain area of Santiago? Sometimes it involves looking up wages for a particular area inside a country, inside a city, and what is appropriate for that specific industry. So there's a lot of stuff you can find in Google. And it's a lot easier nowadays too, because with AI, you can make language conversions so much easier than you could before. And so really, language isn't a limitation for you as far as trying to procure data. Another thing I would say is that don't be afraid to actually make some phone calls or drop some emails, right? Contact the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, contact the Commerce Department, right? There are government agencies that would be super excited about sharing information if they thought that it meant sending some business overseas so that they can make some money. Obviously, it's not easy to get all of the information you will need, and so I'm going to say just a little bit more about that here. I know some firms are publicly traded and you can get a lot of information, right? It's a lot of stuff that you're just not going to know going into it. And that's a blessing and it's a curse, okay? The curse is that you're going to have to figure out what to do with that, knowing that there's not very much information to be gathered. The blessing is that I'm going to give you a lot of grace because I know you don't have hard data. So, this is how it goes. You need to make assumptions about certain things based on research. So, let's say Leavenworth, Kansas, there's a Scooters, and I don't know how much the people there are being paid. Well, maybe I can look at I know what the local minimum wage is. I could probably make some assumptions about people who are working for that kind of business and how much they may be working per hour, and I can plug that in. And then when I do my narrative, I can say, I assumed that it was $10 an hour, and here's why, right? I did this research, or I know this guy who manages a place, and he can tell me some stuff, or whatever, right? You tell me why it's $10 an hour in your narrative, and then you go with it. You just run with it. Another tool that I suggest you use when you're thinking about financial plans is, PPP, purchasing power parity, right? Some use a Big Mac index, which is sort of similar, converting currency rates and stuff like that. But, if you explain to me that here's the PPP conversion and that these numbers are based on that, then that's cool. I will say as much information that you can find that is local is going to be better than saying, okay, I assume that an American is making $10 an hour here, and then I do purchasing power parity to figure out what that wage would be in Malaysia. That might still be inflated, right? You're probably better off just trying to find out what the going rate is there. But there's some places where, purchasing power parity might be a really good way to sort of like say, okay, well, here's the cost of something in the United States. If I do the conversion, then the relative cost might be this. Just plug in the equation and off you go. And that's an assumption too. You just have to say, this is how I did my calculation. This is how, this is this much in America. I did this conversion. This is how much I think it is there. What are property values like in whatever your city is? Based on whatever area it is. Is it a super nice area? Is it a warehouse district? What are those levels? So that's the kind of research that you have to do. So that's the curse side. That's the fact that okay, so there's going to be a little bit of work involved. But I also know that you're still going to have to make some guesses. Maybe you don't get that information, and so you're going to have to say, all right, well, what is the national average on property value? And it would probably be higher in the city, so I'm going to add X percentage to it. Why am I going to add that X percentage to it? Maybe there's a cost of living difference between this area and this area. Well, so you're going to have to just think about it and do the best you can. I'm not going to sit here and fret over whether or not somebody is really making the equivalent of $10 an hour here or there in absolute terms, but it does have to make sense. The bottom line is you have to explain it to me, right? Tell me what you did. Tell me how you did it. Tell me why you did it. It's a very good exercise to go through. It really is. But yeah, there's no perfection in this. It's more art than science. So I'm saying this to you so you don't freak out and get too worried about what if the numbers aren't exactly right. I want them to add up, but they don't have to be perfectly right. But they do have to be researched. They do have to be and if you can't research it, then you've got to tell me why you came up with what you came up with, right? Defend it. As you can see, I didn't really go into the minutia of a finance plan, but hopefully I gave you some tips and ideas and tricks that will help you put something together in a way that's meaningful, something that's going to be able to sell somebody on your idea, and hopefully just help you find some of the things you need or make the assumptions that you need to in order to try to demonstrate the validity of your arguments. Like I said before, if you thought that was helpful, please like and subscribe. So until next time, hope you're doing all right, and I will see you later.